Roxy.
Good morning, Tam Tam.
It's day 963 of quarantine, but it's the 7th week. And what day or time really is it? I have no idea anymore.
It literally feels like Groundhog Day. No, it doesn't even matter what day it is.
It doesn't even matter. But what does matter is our guest, right?
I know. Okay, I have a confession to make.
You're obsessed with the
Bachelor.
I know you so are.
I know. It's a thing I've been wanting to tell you for some time now.
I didn't know.
I feel like today is the day. So here's what happened with my love of Bachelor. So I used to be obsessed with The Bachelor. I watched it all the time.
I didn't know this about you.
I know. See, you find out new things every day with me.
Every day.
It's good. It's good. So yeah, I used to watch The Bachelor religiously. And then somebody came on that I wasn't crazy about. So I had a breakup with The Bachelor and I was kind of like, well, I can't tell you who, but Ben Higgins, who is our Bachelor today, who is our guest, brought me back to the show. So I am very excited to have him here because he's the one who brought me back. He brought me back. Thank you so much, Ben Higgins.
I really thought, I was convinced that we were going down a path of you saying it was me that you didn't like. And I thought I had just walked in to the firing squad.
Exactly. We're like, and this is what you did. I've watched The Bachelor, but I'm not as obsessed with it as Roxy is.
It's good.
But so if you were going to tell a layman what is The Bachelor, if someone had never seen The Bachelor, how would you describe the show?
Oh boy. Well, I would say this. If I'm trying to convince you to watch it, I am saying it's a single person's journey to find love in the most untraditional format. Mm-hmm. And I'd probably leave it there because then you would ask 1,000 questions like, what do you mean untraditional? I'd say, well, they're dating 25 people at once. So that doesn't make any sense. How do you do that? And I'm saying, you're just gonna have to watch it because you never, when you get 25 people in a house competing for one person's affection.
I know. It's like my dream.
Oh
my God. All these people would be into me. Well, are they? I don't know. I just feel like I would be like, I'd feel really good about myself. I just would. I'd be like, there's 25 people who have to like me right now, even if I don't think I'm that good.
You would be doing 25 fantasy suites. Like you'd be doing a fantasy suite every night, Tammin.
What happens in a fantasy suite? Ben,
tell us. Tell us everything that goes down in the fantasy suite.
The fantasy suite is so picture this, and I'll let your mind go where it wants to go.
Oh.
You're filming for 3 months. All right? You're kissing, you're snuggling, you're hugging, you're just all over these people.
Okay.
And for 3 months, you don't have any alone time until the fantasy suite. And then you have the whole evening just for you and at the time one other person, but you have 3 different fantasy suites in a traditional season. So you have 3 months of a lot of stuff build up. You need to talk a lot. You need to explore life together a lot. And you have a lot of built up frustration.
Oh my gosh. I don't know if I love this idea.
But the cameras are rolling in the fantasy suite though, right? Correct?
What'd you say?
The cameras are rolling in the fantasy suite.
Gosh.
No?
Never. No. They're
I thought they kind of tease it a little bit. No? Do they do like a little, like you guys start talking a little bit?
You start and then everybody leaves. You start and then everybody leaves. Yep.
Except for the cameras like on the roof that are like painted over in white that you have. I would be in that fantasy suite and I'd be like, where the F are the cameras? Like I'm looking for them. Are they under the tree? Are they under the table? Because I don't like to be watched normally in my everyday life. So yeah, I think it'd be.
Tell us more.
Yeah, please, right? Except when my husband's always filming me. But no, I find the concept very interesting. I don't know if it seems as sexy as it comes across though, because there's a lot of emotions too, and people get hurt, and the sexy stuff is good in theory, but then you might get over kissing so many people, which I never thought I'd say out loud. You might just be like, I don't want to do this today, Yeah.
No, you're
does
right.
it ever get old? You like kissing all those people and
100%. So here's 2 ways that I would like respond to that. One is, it's 25 people. And so there was one evening, and I'm not going to say who, throw her under the bus. She knows who she is. She just had a hot dog right before we started talking.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so like that really throws the game off because that's not just like one person. That's like, that can happen 4 or 5 times an evening. And like that, you don't want to say it on TV. You don't want to say it to them because that's definitely getting aired. And it's definitely going to be crushing for their soul. So you just take it and you just sit in that. The second is you definitely say it's not as fantastical as you would imagine. For one reason is you've been around at least 20 people every second you've been with this person that you're with in the fantasy suite for the last 3 months. Once they leave, it's really weird. Like you don't know what to do together. You're just like, I guess it's you and like, I guess we start talking. I don't know. Like,
I guess we have to talk.
Yeah. So no, it's really awkward. It's not as like, I've never talked to anybody. It's been like, that was the most beautiful evening of my life. Like for example, Caitlin Bristow and I had an evening, a fantasy suite, and it was in Ireland in this beautiful castle. And at this point, Caitlin and I were really good friends, and we kind of knew that it was a good understanding for us to just be kind of, we knew this wasn't probably going to last. So what we decided to do was we decided to take a fifth of Irish whiskey, drink it, and put on a dance party because I hadn't heard like music in months because we're not allowed to have it. And we just drank and danced, and it was fantastic. It was a beautiful evening. So, I mean, that wasn't as sexy, but it was fun.
That sounds sexy to me.
I know. A little drunky dance party. Like, that's pretty fun, you know? So needless to say, you didn't stay with the lady that you chose on The Bachelor, but for all good. Because now...
Because she ate a hot dog. I know, it's probably not her. But now I'm thinking of all the times that I've tried to fuck with my husband. I've been like, oh, I probably ate that. That's why he doesn't, because I always try to kiss my husband all the time. And he's like, my mouth's dry. But what he really means is you've eaten some shitty form of fake meat. And now I have to kiss you and I don't want to kiss you, but he's trying to be nice. So now I've learned that from you. Thank you, Ben.
Sour cream and onion dip. And then you try to go in for one. No, I am not with the person from the show. It ends really well. She is now married. I would imagine happily married. It's brand new, so it's still super exciting. And I am recently engaged to the love of my life, and it's all worked out in the end, which has been really, really good.
That's amazing. And you got engaged recently, actually in quarantine, correct?
I did. Yeah, this has been... So my original plan for the proposal, so I've been on tour. Warner Brothers put together this tour called The Bachelor Live on Stage. And I'm hosting this tour along with my friend Becca Kufrin, who's a former Bachelorette. And it's a 4-month long tour. It's a long time. And we were going through the East Coast. And I knew I didn't want to wait any longer to propose to my girlfriend because I had asked her father for his blessing in December. I knew that if I stretched this out any longer, it was really going to start throwing some questions in the air from everybody on like, what is going on here? And so I said, okay, I picked a spot. I told her family, I told my family, March 21st in New York City, I'm going to propose to my girlfriend. Well, what would we expect? The virus shuts down the tour.
Everything
changes. And so we have to do a quick audible. And within a week, we planned it. We came and we have been in isolation. We're down here right now in Nashville, Tennessee with her family. And we audibled to do it in her backyard. We set up her favorite flowers. Her family was able to be here. It was actually really great. But it wasn't expected to be during quarantine. It was just part of the plan that we had already had existed. And it's worked.
Wow. That's great. I mean, you're quick on your toes to shift the plan like that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I feel so grateful and blessed that we aren't sick. So like that is the number first and foremost. I feel grateful, but I would also be like, this is how I have to be proposed to in quarantine. Like I'd be like, where are my horses on the beach with the champagne?
But you know what? Proposed to?
No, I actually got proposed to in Israel.
Oh.
In Tel Aviv on the beach. And funny story, I don't know if I've ever told you this, Roxy, but they lost all our suitcases. And so when my husband went to propose, he had no clothes. So thank goodness he had the ring box, because I was thinking like, oh my God, I didn't know he was going to propose, but imagine he had the ring, which he wouldn't have, in his suitcases, and those got lost. So we actually had to borrow my father's clothes. So he proposed to me in my father's outfit, with my father's shoes, with my father's, like, his cologne, everything. So I was like looking at him, thinking of my dad when he said, will you marry me? And I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to go down, but I said yes. But it was awesome. It was a good proposal. It was a good proposal.
So, I mean, you and I both have similar stories in some ways. Like, it's not how we planned it. It's probably not as we expected.
Yeah, true.
But here's the cool part. Her brother plays professional baseball. Her other brother just moved to Nashville with his wife, and they're looking for a house. So everybody's living under one roof. So they all got to be here to celebrate.
Yeah.
So it worked out. Yeah.
That's really nice.
Where's the wedding going to be?
Your guess is as good as mine right now.
Oh, so it's up to her, right?
It's up to her, and
good man. You'll last.
Yeah, I'm staying so far out of that piece of the puzzle, but I have advised, and I don't know if I'll regret this later or not. I have advised us not to start planning a wedding until we figure out what this whole scenario is going to look like. We have too many friends calling right now going, hey, my wedding's canceled, or hey, I've had to postpone. And it's just not something that I want Jess and I to have to stress about, but we are doing it as soon as we can. It's just right now it's up in the air.
Right. You can always do a Zoom wedding. I mean, that's also trending.
That sounds like real fun.
Right. I know. Sometimes you got to do what you got to do. It's so crazy. But how did you know that she was the one? What was it about Jessica that you just knew that this was the girl?
And all the girls weren't the one in the back. There's so many women you could have chosen from.
So many. And that's why Jessica is so special.
Because she's not one of them.
Yeah, she's not one of them. They were actually all, a lot of them were really great. I think that the show's hard to get to know people on. And you don't have a lot of people that are compatible with you. I think it's part of the show's setup is, you get like 4 or 5 that you're compatible with, maybe, and the rest are kind of like not your personality, but they're really good personalities. They're good for the
It's TV, right? They want to make good TV.
100%. And so, you might shock people and pick somebody that they didn't expect, but for the most part, I'm sure if you asked them and they were honest with you, they could probably tell from the beginning who was going to be there at the end, or at least the final 3 or 4. I'll tell you this. I sum it up in one way. Jessica and I share a lot of similar things. Our faith, our desire to have family, our desire to love on our family that we have currently. Those things are important and definitely the foundation to who we are as people. But it's her empathy. That girl is so empathetic and loves to support me. Like, if I'm sad, she wants to mourn with me. If I'm joy-filled, she wants to celebrate with me. If she hurts me, like she is crushed. And I would hope she would say the same thing about me. I can't speak for myself, but or I can't speak for how she would feel about me. And I don't want to give myself too many compliments here. But when it comes to her, she is just a terrific partner. And she's been that since the very beginning. And I guess there became a time where I said, man, this girl's beautiful. I love who she is and what she stands for. And I love how safe and comfortable she makes me feel. Like, what else would I want? And so it was the most beautiful commitment in my mind that I made to say, okay, this is what's going to happen here, and I'm going to ask her. So yeah.
Roxy and I are writing down notes because we're like, be nicer to our husbands. Make sure that when they're being an asshole, to not make it about ourselves. Because I swear, you said all those things. I was like, oh, that sounds so nice.
So nice.
But normally, like, when he's in a pissy mood, I'm like, it's your fault. Like, it's just lame. But that's what happens, Ben, sometimes. I'm not saying Roxy and I have been with our husbands for like 13 to 15 years.
Yeah.
3 small children between us. So I think by 13 years, you'll love her just as much, but you might be like, oh, do you have to leave the bathroom door open again? Like, there'll be something after 13 years that will annoy you.
Uh-huh.
But we do love our husbands, and I would say we don't have a prenup, so we're stuck. I was going to say that you said that you were going to be, that you're not going to have sex in quarantine until you're married. You are the best person I know, because I wanted that. Like, in theory, I was like, that's so amazing. But then I just couldn't do it.
Yeah. How are you doing? Well, I guess living in her parents' house too is probably not that sexy.
Never stopped us, Roxy.
Right. True.
There's a closet, Roxy.
It's really for us, it's been a really exciting commitment to make to each other. One, it's really important to Jessica, and I love her, and I want her to be protected and safe. And I want our relationship to start out with her knowing confidently that I can agree and also get behind and support something like this, so that in the future, she only knows me as a safe place and not a place of letting my own kind of desires or my own history and past bring it into our relationship. So this is a fresh start for us both. Our past led us to each other. And this is something that's important to her, so it's important to me. The next is, I just think it's healthy for us. I think I'm 31. I've obviously dated. I've been in serious relationships before. When I look at Jessica, I see and knew very early on that she was the one. And I knew that if we could set this commitment to each other, it's not a boundary. It really isn't even a religious decision. Even though our faith is important to us, it really doesn't have anything to do with it. It's never been a part of our conversations on, hey, we shouldn't do this because God doesn't want us to. That's not really what we feel or think. It's, I want you to, I think it's both of us. Like, I want you to know that you are my one. Like, this is our fresh start together, and let's make this commitment so that when we can, it's special, and remember just how special it is. So yeah, it's been wild. And honestly, at this point, it's a year and a half. It's so much easier than it was a year ago.
That's a long time. I waited a good 3.5 days.
I waited 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah. You were pretty fast, Roxy. I was in the film set for 2 weeks, so I feel like 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks. Let's just say 2 weeks. 2 weeks and 3 hours.
I don't think I don't think it's necessarily bad to test drive the car before you decide to buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, if chemistry's there, yeah.
I think men seem to be satisfied with not that much. I think women sometimes, like, I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting subject, and it's good that everyone has different viewpoints. And I think that in our world right now, it's okay to have opposing sides of the coin. It doesn't mean anything's right or anything's wrong. It's just how we like to live our lives for what works for us and our families. And I think that we need to have more conversations like that. We're not like you, you're not like us, but we can all be in it together. So,
and I think that's where what I would love my life to represent. Like, I want to sit down with people who don't agree with me and learn from them. And I hope they do the same to me, and that we aren't in this to be like contentious and for us to start trying to prove to each other what's right and wrong in this scenario. Because it isn't black and white. It's a lot of gray on what's best and healthy. Here's my response to, test drive the car. I would probably agree with you. I don't think it's wrong, and I don't think it's unhealthy, but I know this, that because one of my, nobody really knows this, but when I went to college, my hope was to be a sex educator within the church. So I wanted to be within the Christian church, and I wanted to speak to youth and adults about sex and healthy sex. I thought sex had just been destroyed by the church for years on how like dark it felt. Like it got weird.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I wanted to celebrate it and lift it up and like relieve some like damage that the church had caused people. And so I've said this, when it comes down to sex, it's a lot of communication. It's a lot of, experiencing and experimenting with your partner and each other. And if you aren't compatible initially, I do believe you can become compatible over time based on how much you want to, like how much you desire to. If you have somebody you love, like you want to work at making this thing the healthiest and best and most fulfilling for both of you, then it's going to be fine. Like, I'm not worried about it. And that's what I tell Jessica often is like, I'm not worried about this because I know we can make it work. That's not something that concerns me.
Does such a position even exist in the church, or is that like something you wanted to kind of do and like, start yourself?
I think it exists outside of the church. So I think it's a lot of counseling. I think it's like Christian counselors. I'm sure like other religions would have counselors of some sort that would do it too. For me, it was a response. There was this big movement that went through that tried to do a lot of good. And I think it did in a lot of levels, but it was the purity movement. If you're listening and you grew up in the church, you probably heard this, and it swept over the country, and people were making promises with these little promise rings to say, I'm not going to have sex till marriage at like 12 years old. And then they would have sex at like 18 and they'd feel
dirty,
super dirty and
shame,
super guilty.
So much shame.
Yeah. Shame is never a part of, and again, like Jesus's message. And it just wasn't something that I thought people should carry at any level of life. So I just want to get out and talk about it and start saying like, let's get healthy again. Let's not carry shame and guilt. Let's talk about like what is good and what is healthy, what is beautiful about it. So I don't know if it exists, but I knew it was a path that I care about and I love to talk about. And I'm not ashamed or weirded out to talk about. It's actually really fun for me to sit down and talk about sex with people. I think it's great.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up Christian, and I never really understood when people were like, don't do this because it's not what I feel like Jesus would want. But at the end of the day, doesn't Jesus just want love? Like, isn't it just about love and kindness and being a good person? Like, sometimes I think like when the Bible says a man and a man should not be together, but at the end of the day, Jesus is love and acceptance. So it all should be accepted. Like anyone's different. We're all different. And I feel like a God and Jesus is a loving God. And I don't know. I don't think we should be putting down anyone's way of life in a way. I don't know. That's just my take.
I would hope that God is a loving God. I'll say that. I really would hope so. I believe confidently so, based on what I've seen in life and what I look at when the birds are flying through the air and the trees are waving in the wind and people are conjoining together. I mean, look at this time in our life. One of the times that feels like one of the darkest moments that we've had in hundreds of years. And the response has been tough for many. But I bet even the people that are hurting the most have felt like humans have cared more now than ever before.
Oh, of course.
To care for them. And so, that to me represents a God that is moving and active and loving amongst us. And if you look at the fruits of the Spirit, like, shame, guilt, is not any of those. In fact, it's the opposite. It's joy, it's peacefulness, it's kindness, it's love. And so I don't know where to draw boundaries. That's way above my pay grade. Like, I don't know how to tell somebody how to live their life. I don't think I ever should, because I don't know the story that's that's brought you to this point and what you've experienced to make you feel the way you do. What I can do is represent what I think is the God of this world. And that is a God that loves, a God that wants to bring joy, a God that wants to bring peace, a God that wants to talk through things and understand, and a God that loves our stories. And upon that, I stop. Like, I cannot tell you much more than that, because it gets dangerous for me to set any type of, what you should or shouldn't do in life.
So, Ben, we talk about this a lot on the show, Tammin and I. We talk about death, and we talk about having a fear of death. We both have a very severe fear of death, like anxiety ridden. You lay in bed at night, like texting each other about it and be like, oh my God, I feel like I'm going to die. Like, it's a whole anxiety thing. How do you feel about death? Do you think that there's an afterlife? Are you afraid of it? Are you, what is your take on that?
Yeah. So two things here. It's interesting you say that. I'm currently, and I'm a big believer in it. I'm in counseling. I've been in counseling for, this stint in counseling has been about 3 months now. And a lot of it is about my anxiety over death. My anxiety, in my counselor, if he's listening to this, would be like, oh, good, he's talking about it. But I have a massive confusion with death, mostly because I think a lot of my faith has been built on a wrestling with God. It's a lot of doubt, a lot of confusion, a lot of processing questions like you asked about why the Bible says this and why I feel like Jesus stood for this and where I stand on that. And it's been a lot of of processing these things that I do think are important to process. But ultimately also, then I start looking, because of my wrestling, I start looking at the afterlife. Like, I want nothing more than to be confident that I'll run this race in life, loving on people well and enjoying their stories. And at the end, I will meet this God that created me and will be in communion at whatever level in this kingdom that Jesus talks about. Like, I want to believe there's an afterlife. I want to believe the kingdom of God is good and full of love and that it exists.
Are you scared that there might not be?
Oh, 1,000%, 1,000%. I would tell you right now, I'm not confident that there is an afterlife. And that's part of my wrestling right now. Hey, I don't want to preach to you, but there's a great book that is not religiously biased. It is just one of the most beautiful things I've ever read. It was recommended to me by a religious writer named Jonathan Merritt out of New York City. He's just a solid dude. It's called Learning to Walk in the Dark. It's by Barbara Brown Taylor. I've been reading it, and it talks about how we run from our fears, we numb our fears, we escape our fears, but actually we're learning so much more in the dark than we are in the light. If you have fears and anxieties and these huge ones like death,
right?
It's a beautiful thing to read, and she does such a good way to explain it. But yes, the three of us would sit here, and I just finished a book 2 days ago, and the whole last 4 chapters are on my panic attacks leading up to me going to counseling, waking up at 3:00 in the morning, thinking that this is all going to end and I'm going to be gone for forever. Like, I won't know anything forever. And that scares the shit out of me.
Every night I think of that. And I have this guttural sound that comes out of me. And I'm like, oh God, I hope it doesn't happen every night. But when it does, it's and I don't want anyone to hear in the house. And I just have to calm myself down because look, I would change if you told me that there's definitely something else and I'd see all the people that I love again. I would live like the perfect life if that's what I got in return. But because I'm not exactly sure, it's not like I'm not living the perfect life. I'm just living a good life and hoping for the best, because I'd rather believe that there is something rather than there isn't something, because what choice do you have? The thing that I find a little overwhelming or frustrating is when people are sure. They're like, I'm just sure. And I'm like, no one's sure because no one's been there. So no one's sure.
It's their way of dealing with probably the scary part of it, the finality, it's like, because do we really know? We don't really know. I mean,
there's this
when it brings out to it.
Yeah. There's this it's not a great book, but there's this great person called Oprah. I don't know if you've heard of her.
The big O.
Yeah. And she talks about soul sessions, and she was talking to this amazing guy. I can't exactly remember who it was. Maybe I'll put it in the comments. And something that she said to him resonated with me so deeply that I stopped for about a good 6 months freaking out about dying. And it was, maybe it's just the next level of something, whatever that means. I don't know. Maybe that's not going to make you sleep at night. But when I saw my daughter, Roxy and I have 3 kids between us. This really hit with my second daughter. And I was telling Roxy that all of a sudden there's no heartbeat, then there's a heartbeat. And you're like, and then she's here and she's conscious and maybe it's just the next form of whatever that is, I don't know.
That doesn't help me. I'll be honest. It doesn't. It scares me maybe more because I love. Well, no. Yeah. And I say that only because I've had these conversations and I've processed this to write them down in a book. And I'm somebody, I just want to know what is going on.
That's control.
Yeah.
It's control. And it's also, I talk about my faith walk is a walk of just trying to find truth wherever it is. Being closed down and thinking you know everything since you're in middle school isn't fun to me. I don't want to just believe in a God because I was told to. I want to pursue truth, whatever it takes me, because like you said, if I was confident in this truth, then I would respond accordingly, which I would hope would be a reverence, an understanding, a search, a journey, a meditation, prayer towards this, a worship towards this truth, a worship going, I'm so glad I found truth. And I'm confident that I found that in Jesus, mostly because when I look around me again, I see a life of love. And I know when people are following a life of service, of loving others, mourning for those who need to mourn, celebrating with those who need celebration, That's directly from Jesus' message, and it directly relates with how this world works best. And so as a result, I just want to keep pursuing what Jesus said and what he does. But I'm sick and tired, and honestly, just a little bit. I just have a lot of baggage from the people who look at life and go, "Oh, I definitely know, and this is how you need to respond."
Right?
Because it's just not that way. And if we're if we're honest with ourselves, if we're honest with the world we live in, it's really hard to get to that place. We only do it, I think, out of fear. I think I heard an interesting quote last week when I was kind of finished up last chapter. And Richard Rohr says, he's an author, and he says this. He says, every fear we have comes from our fear of our escape of death. So every fear we have actually just comes from our escape of death. And you start thinking about it, it is. Like even at the smallest levels, if we're scared of spiders, why are you scared of spiders? I mean, you have to answer that, but it's ultimately like you could trace it back to your fear of death.
Do you like flying? Because I don't like flying.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also not trying to run from it. I know it's going to hit me at some point. There's one thing we have in common between the three of us, and that's the fact that we are all going to die. Nobody's escaped it. That at least in the
it's peace. And I do think it's a control thing. I think we all have a control issue. Everyone does. Some people less so than other people. I just believe this is my. I don't know. When I went to Israel and saw the Wailing Wall and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Dome on the Rock, they were all very close to each other. And I'm like, I think it was just Chinese whispers. And I feel like it's all kind of the same thing. I feel like there probably is a God and there is a Jesus and there is all of it. And I think it's all the same message. But then I also believe in Buddhism and I believe in other lives in a way. And I believe in the spirit. So I don't know, maybe there's just some big governing spirit that we will never find out until we find out.
Or maybe you can. And that's something that I'm interested in. I'm looking at right now. I'm praying for. It's like, what if we can find out? And there's Christian mystics, there's Buddhist mystics, like there's mystics out there looking for the mystery. And I'm on that journey myself. I'm looking for the mystery, and I would believe that there's a God. If there is a God, that if I was on a search to find that God, that God would show up somehow, some way. Like it wouldn't be right if we have a God of love and a human spends their whole life like gnawing for truth, desiring truth, trying to respond to truth wherever it is. And that God just forsakes him. Like, I just don't believe he does. I believe that God is active and real in my life, and I have stories to prove it. But yeah, it's an exciting journey. It's a worthwhile journey. And it's one that I've been on for 31 years, I think.
Yeah.
Don't you feel, Roxy, when you have a child, you feel like they're as closest to God because they were just born? They seem godlike.
They seem godlike because they're so innocent and they're so just pure and like full of love and curiosity and want to just see things for the first time through their eyes. And it's like, it's such an amazing, it's so cool just to look at them and watch them grow and watch them see the world through these like clear, pure eyes, because it takes you back to a time when you were like that as well. And it's like before getting jaded and before, learning about all these other outside things, it's really beautiful and it's really, really special.
It's like, I feel like children, like you said, they haven't been messed up yet. So they just think they don't hold grudges and they don't bully, like they don't like young kids. They're not looking through eyes of like trauma and hate and shame and, physical, emotional, mental pain because they haven't got there yet. So it's just interesting because we had Earth Week and I told my daughter like that the earth is, I didn't say the earth is crumbling. We've got 11 years, but I'm kind of like, we need to turn the lights off because of this, and this. We have to, we have to make sure that we don't waste water. And she just got it. It was like, we tell adults so many times, we have like 11 years before we pretty much might not have a world to live in. Like we have to do something right now. And they're like, oh, we're still going to have this much plastic and we're still going to use this much water. But kids, they just get it. They're like, oh, there's a problem. We don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
We will do the right thing.
Well, it's like, too, when does that switch happen? When does that stop? Like, when does somebody stop being a kid and think in those terms and then become jaded? And is it like trauma? Is it, a certain stage of life? What is it?
Going through I look at my life and all the trauma and PTSD that I've had is from living life and not having the right tools to get through those moments. So like when I had a Me Too movement, thank goodness I wasn't, severely had a Me Too movement, but I didn't have the tools to figure that out. So I just lived with that. And then when, I failed because of something or was called fat and bullied, I didn't have the tools to think that I was enough. So then I spent a lot of my childhood thinking that I wasn't enough. So I just think it's all this pain that we hold that we never release because we don't talk about it. And everything just becomes like this plaque on like our bones that we just, and I think children don't have that as much.
It's interesting. My very first childhood memory is, this is, I think, somewhat interesting, is laying in my bed as a 3.5-year-old. And I looked at the wall and I had like carved into the wall 1, 2, 3. Like with like lines. And I remember going, wow, I've made it 3.5 years. How special is that? I've made it here 3.5 years. I remember this moment. And obviously we've processed that. So my awareness of life and the fragility of life, but also the beauty of life, I think happened very early on. And here, I think, is my story of losing it. Is I was young. I was 7 years old. I was in a class and we did partner reading. And I was the only person to not get picked. Like the kids got to pick their partners and I didn't get picked. Yeah. And I remember the teacher coming over to me and going, "Oh, you're my partner today." And I knew exactly what that meant. And it was my first time feeling rejection. And so ever since then, I have this enormous insecurity of being the outsider looking into the group.
Right.
I'm sure you guys have a lot of like moms who listen to this and are fans of you guys. I learned something interesting. I don't know if you guys could tell. I don't have kids. I haven't been around a lot of little kids, but my counselor
that you know of.
Well, we don't know. We don't know. He might have. I don't know. Are you saving yourself for marriage? You never told us. You never told us.
Yeah, you never told us.
Not in the last year and a half. But my counselor, and I don't know if you guys, if moms out there could know this, or if you have kids around you would know this. I don't know this, but this is what he told me. He said that little kids almost have this sense of telepathy. Is telepathy the right word? Like they will say things that they should not know about, but yet they know them somehow, some way. Like they will know as a little kid, they will say something. You're like, how did you learn that? Or where did that come from? Or like, where did you take that from? And they don't even know. And there's nothing that points to the knowledge that they have. And it's almost like they're taking it from someplace else and they brought it into this world, like an understanding, a peacefulness, maybe a nugget of truth. Maybe like they'll check you where you're at in your selfishness and you'll be like, whoa, how did you know? How are you so aware of who you were as a person to be able to tell me who I am as a person as like a 2-year-old? I don't know that, but that's what he's telling me that is true. And it's true with every kid. And so if moms out there, dads out there are listening, I just wonder if that's something you've experienced.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I do a lot. I actually learned a lot from my daughter. She's 5.5. And there are times when I just literally am bowled over and I'm like, it's the same kind of reaction. It's like, how did you know that? Like, how did that come, like that knowledge? And it's like you're saying, they don't know. They don't even know how to explain it, but they know it, Yeah. So where does that come from? Does that come from God? Does that come from like another life? Does that come from like another plane, another place? It's really an interesting thought. But I think, for me as a parent, I learn from my daughter all the time.
Yeah,
she all the time is doing that. They're our greatest teachers. They're our greatest teachers.
It's funny. The other day, I was just so overwhelmed just because I have a 1-year-old as well. And my husband, who's a child of 3 children, just kidding. I look after 3 children. No, he's really good. He actually does a lot of the cleaning, if not most of it, and cooks a lot. His cooking isn't wonderful, but he does like the basic stuff. But I was in the bedroom and she goes, "Mom, I ran a bath for you and made you some food because no one takes care of you."
Oh,
and that's not true. Again, my husband definitely takes care of me, and he's actually so on the kids that sometimes I don't get as much attention when it takes for him to take care of me. And then she cut up some cucumbers and put them on my eyes and said, "You have to have a spa day."
I like this girl.
I know, right? Send her so over to our houses.
Yeah. It's funny because like I don't feel like anyone's, I didn't grow up. I don't know if Roxy, you were like this. Like I didn't grow up as like a kid person. I wasn't like, oh, every time you saw a kid, I was like, oh my God, they're so cute. Let me get that. Like that just wasn't me. I was like, oh, that's a cute kid. That's your kid. Like that's your kid.
Well, and I know we've talked about this before. My husband and I actually planned on not having kids. Yeah. We were like, why would we muck up our lives? We're like, we're so having fun.
We can travel.
Happy, can travel. We can sleep in. We can pick up and go as we please. But I mean, obviously it happened and it was like the best thing that ever happened to me. But it's funny coming from like that train of thought to the other side.
Because when you have your own child, it's like, I always say this, you've known them your whole life. You're just like, oh my God, you're my insides. Like you're my arm, I always say to Sean, and I think it's different for dads. I don't know if you think this, Roxy, but when I travel, it's not even panic, anxiety, because I've always struggled with that. I feel like something's missing. Like when I travel, I feel like there's like a body part that like is kind of not there, and my body feels off and my mind feels off, and I just something doesn't seem right. Now with my husband, and I do think it's a man thing because maybe it's a hunter-gatherer, but he can go and travel and be like, oh, I'll come back in 3 days and you guys will be there and I love you and everything's fine. Right. But as a mother, I don't know. I feel like I've been like split apart.
Well, especially when you birth them, they've been in your body, like they've been a part of us.
I think they want to get back in my body, by the way. My baby wants to go back inside my body.
But it's, it's true. It's like when you do, it's almost like you can't 100% rest when you're away from them like that. Like even if you're in like the most beautiful place. I remember my husband and I traveled, this was 2 summers ago, we traveled with some friends to Italy, and it was, the most picturesque, beautiful place you can go on the coast. But there was a part of me that still was not like 100%, like, okay, settled. Like, I mean, I enjoyed it and I loved it, but there's that missing piece. You just can't be 100% like at peace when they're not around,
So Ben, can you give us a little bit of man advice before we let you go soon?
Yes.
Okay. How do you know when a guy's into you?
Yes. What's the telltale sign?
Like, how do you know? Do they play games?
Yeah.
No. So like, are you in person or not?
I think in person's almost obvious, but like when it comes to communication, like, are they calling you? Are they texting you? Like how do you know a guy's into you?
I think it's a curiosity. I think when you have somebody sitting across from you showing a curiosity and making eye contact, or if you're away from them, if they're still showing a curiosity in your life, then I believe you can assume they're into you at some level.
Okay.
I think that could be universal, like asking questions and wanting to explore answers out of real interest and not just trying to sleep with you is a terrific thing. And it's not super common.
I know, because I do want to just have sex. Sometimes.
I know. What if it's the woman that wants to sleep?
Like you?
But what if it's the woman that wants to sleep with him and she's like the more aggressive one?
Well, that's fine. You asked me if guys were into you. I don't know how to answer if girls are into you.
Take it. So, would you think that a guy can be into you but still play games?
Yes, I do. I just don't think. I think that's an immature man. I don't think that is a real man. I think guys that want to play games are not confident and not intentional, or they're not confident in being intentional with you. It matters to what sense too. Like a game can be flirty and fun, right? It can be teasing and it can be exciting and it can add something to the relationship. But if it's a game to make you wonder where you're at in his life, I just don't think that there's time or place for that anymore. I don't think it's healthy to a relationship. I think when I met Jessica and I knew that I was into her, I couldn't wait to sit her down in the appropriate way and say, hey, I see this being something really great. Do you? She responded. And now we're on the same place. I think defining kind of where you're at in your relationship is an extremely important thing, especially if you really care about somebody.
So you were pretty straight up with her right from the get-go, sort of?
I mean, it took like a month and a half. I think there was like wisdom. I think we both knew it, but before I verbalized it, like I didn't want to like just jump and say it out there right away. But once I knew that I was confident in where we were at, I said, hey, I really want to do the right thing here. I want us to give this the best shot possible, because if it ends, I want to know we tried. And if but if it's good, then like this season of our life will be one we look back on with like a lot of joy because we tried our best.
What is the biggest turnoff when it comes to a woman? It doesn't have to be physical. It can be emotional or mental.
Yep.
I think it's maybe just my life, and like my experience with women. I think this next generation of women and your generation are really standing up for who they are and how powerful and important you are to this world. I think the women that came before you have tried and got suppressed due to 1,000 different reasons. And I think it added an indecisiveness that like there was a fear in like being leaders and making decisions because of the repercussions and the judgment and the criticism. And I think that is just awful. It hurts me personally. And I don't know if it's a turnoff as much as just like frustrating because you just want to kind of look at your partner or look at women around you and be like, how important you are, right? Like, how valuable you are, right? Like, I'm not saying this to pump you up. Like this is truth that I need you to know that, like, I know you've had some really nasty men and women in your life who've criticized you for being the leader that I know you should and can be and that you have been. And I don't think this thing works unless women and men are working together and doing it alongside of each other in partnership, not just romantically, but in all aspects of life. That no side looks at each other less than or more than. And so, yeah, I think for me, it would just be, I love a woman who is confidently knows who she is and her value. And that's also part of, my goal as a partner is to let Jessica know all the time how valuable and worthy she is of having a ton of leadership in our life.
Has she ever watched back like episodes of your show, like The Bachelor, Bachelorette? Okay, so she hasn't seen you making out with like a bunch of girls on
that would
camera.
Kill me.
Yeah, would she be? Do you think she'd freak out if she saw that?
I hate that. I don't want her to see that.
Yeah, it's like I've done many films and I'm always kissing or making out with someone. My husband doesn't even bat an eyelid. I'm like, I wish you'd be a little more jealous.
Yeah,
like I would like Lorena bob at you. Like if I saw that, I'd be like, no way, no one can be around this area ever again, including me. I'm fine to like cut it off. But he just sees me all the time because he's so used to it. He's like, whatever. That's just an average day in our work.
No.
That's true. It's like work. It's like work for you, Tammin. Yeah. For you, Ben. It was like you were actually on the pursuit of trying to find love. So it's got to be a little bit tricky.
It was real life. It was real life. It was real stuff, and so it's just a little bit heavier, I think, to watch back because it's also what gets brought up all the time. So you just rather be naive to it.
Ben, I know you have to go. Do you have 1 minute for a rapid fire? Never have I ever?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Never have I ever quarantine edition. Okay. So if you, I don't really know the rules to this game, but I think you just say I have or no. I think that's the answer. Okay.
So never have I ever stopped doing self-care in quarantine, i.e. taking showers, like not shaving, that kind of thing.
Never have I ever. You look at me right now. I have a mustache on. So like, I stopped a long time ago.
Yeah. But it looks like you styled it. It looks pretty like shaped and everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So never have I ever cried in quarantine.
I have not cried yet in quarantine.
Oh, that's good.
Roxy, did you not cry?
You did.
I cried when I got down on one knee, 100%. Yeah.
Oh yes. Well, you proposed. I mean, come on. Of course you cried a little.
Yeah.
I would have made my husband cry if he didn't. I'd be like, yo, biatch, you start crying.
Never have I ever thought about another girl in quarantine.
No, never. I don't think so. I'm a pretty simple dude. I think it's like pretty linear for me. It's like a path forward, and anywhere else I just get confused.
Never have I ever wanted to have sex in quarantine, but obviously knew that I couldn't.
Oh, 100%. Yes,
yeah. Okay, good. I just want to make sure everything's still working down there.
Yeah.
You're like,
come on.
I'm fine that you're not having sex. I just want to make sure that you want to. And
Right,
I'm
right.
like, okay, I feel good about that.
What do you have to do? You have to go take a cold shower or something when that happens?
Go work out, run, take a run.
There you go.
You must be in really good shape.
Yeah.
It's like every 2 seconds.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll let you go.
Never have I ever stayed up watching reality TV in quarantine. Stayed up all night watching reality TV.
I'm not a big reality fan. I'm a big movie and like show fan. I'm just not a big reality fan. So no, I haven't.
My movie's out right now, so go watch it, please.
What is it?
It's called Breaking for Whales. Another plug. Roxy's like, stop plugging your movie. I'm like, I don't care. It's on iTunes and Amazon. We're doing a big party on Friday night. So I mean, it's not a real party. It's
Breaking for Whales.
Just you watch it, and if you want us to send you some pizza, we can. Everyone's like getting some pizza sent. So yeah.
Cool. You guys are great.
Oh,
Thank
you're
you
so
so
great,
much,
Ben.
Ben.
And where can everybody find you? Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so my full-time job is operating a coffee company called Generous Coffee. It's a for-purpose company. We donate all of our profits, including my salary, back to organizations that are out there fighting the good fight and fighting injustice around the world. So you can go to generouscoffee.com if you like good coffee and you want coffee that has a purpose. Higgins.Ben on Instagram, Ben Higgy on Twitter, and that's probably the best right now. So yeah, go check it out.
You've got quite the following, Ben.
We are Women on Top Official on Instagram.
And Women on Top Podcast on Facebook.
And I am Tammin Sursock.
And I am Roxy Manning.
And we are Women on Top.